All right, everybody, welcome back to section 2 of our new criminology course. Today we're going to be talking about deterrence, okay? Because this is the one that kind of comes first in time. So we're going to go through kind of the history of criminology in this one a little bit. And we're going to talk about some guys that are, very old, long dead from hundreds of years ago. Now, first, we got to talk about kind of prior to the Enlightenment, prior to 200, 300, 400 years ago. What did people believe about crime? Well, a lot of it, all over the course of the world, a lot of cultures believed that crime was some kind of religious or supernatural phenomenon, right? Whether it was gods or demons or werewolves and vampires or whatever that caused people to become murderers and thieves, and they got some kind of infection from this supernatural source that caused them to do these bad things, right? And there's still lots of places in this world and lots of groups and lots of people that believe this kind of thing, despite it having zero measurable evidence behind it. But there are some things that are kind of still commonly held beliefs that are based on this. For instance, there is a common perception that everything from crime to hospitalizations increase with the full moon, right? You talk to police officers, you talk to ER nurses and doctors, you talk to EMS and firefighters, and a lot of them will tell you that crime and all those kind of negative events increase during a full moon. But is there actually evidence for that? It doesn't really matter. There is a huge belief that it happens, and that is a descendant from the times when people thought, werewolves are activated by the full moon, and that causes them to go out and murder people and destroy things and do all that stuff, right? But all these supernatural explanations kind of resulted in really extreme punishments, right? Everything from kind of tarring and feathering to torture to outright execution, sometimes in the bloodiest and most painful way possible, right? Now we fast forward to the Enlightenment. Okay, this is a time, at least in the Western world, where we're finally starting to kind of say, hey, instead of these kind of ancient beliefs, these supernatural beliefs, instead of taking the ancient Greeks' word for things, let's actually start kind of measuring and thinking for ourselves and coming up with these different ideas that don't rely on supernatural forces, right? So the first person we're going to talk about today is this guy Hobbes, right? And Hobbes kind of took a look at society and he says, okay, society, all groups of people are just that, right? They're just groups of people. And normally people would be in this kind of constant state of warfare. I want stuff, I want food, and I want clothes, and I want, the trappings of richness and abundance. And so I'm going to take it from you, and I'm going to take it from you, right? And that doesn't work. What humanity kind of developed was the social contract, right? We came together as humans to live together in a society, as a group. And part of that was agreeing to a certain set of rules, right? And that set of rules that we all have to agree to live by in order to live together in a society is what Hobbes called the social contract. So if you have something, I am not going to take it from you. Whether it's money or a car or, food or whatever, you have something. Because we're living together in a society, I will not take that from you. I will not hurt you. I will not murder you or assault you, etc. That is all part of this social contract. So Hobbes saw crime as people who were violating that social contract that we had all agreed to live by as part of our living in this society, right? But the really, kind of the first really big major criminologist was this guy named, and I don't know how to pronounce his name, he's Italian, Cesare or Cesare Beccaria, I think, is the proper way to pronounce that, but I could be wrong. And Beccaria, he looked at crime, he looked at criminality of all kinds, and he said, you know, we need to kind of be rational about this. It's not supernatural forces, it's not demons that are causing people to commit crime, it's not just you know, this inherent state of people where they're not being held by this social contract or disagreeing with the social contract. He really looked at a more rational, fair system of criminal justice than the ones that were existing that included, you know, torture and all these kind of what we now look on as really barbaric practices in this criminal justice system. So his idea was that crime is a rational choice, right? People choose to commit crime. In any given instance, a potential criminal will think, okay, what are the possible benefits of committing this crime? And what are the possible penalties for committing this crime? And they're going to weigh those. And if the benefits outweigh the costs, they will choose to commit a crime. If the costs outweigh the benefits, they will choose to not commit the crime, right? So Beccaria was a really kind of radical idea at the time, that crime is not due to demons or whatever, or just that person being a bad person. It was a choice, a rational weighing of the options, weighing of the pros and cons, right? And because of this, he came up with the idea of deterrence, right? If people are going to make this choice, we need to make it easier or better for them to choose to not commit crime if we want to reduce crime, right? So the way he saw it, there were 3 different ways we could deter criminals from committing crime. We could make people choose to not commit crime. And that is with the certainty of punishment, the swiftness of punishment, and the severity of punishment, right? So as people think, should I commit this crime or not? The more we can make the possibility of them getting punished for it more certain, as long as we can increase that certainty that they will be caught and they will be punished, the more that's going to weigh on the negative side of, okay, maybe I shouldn't commit the crime, right? Then there's the swiftness of punishment. The closer in time the punishment is to the criminal act, the more that's going to weigh in people's choices. So if it's, you know, I might get punished, and even if I do get punished, that's going to be, you know, years from now or months from now, okay, I'm going to go ahead and commit the crime. But if it's, I'm going to immediately get this punishment, that's going to weigh a little bit more heavily upon their decision of whether they're going to commit that crime or not. And then finally, there's the severity of punishment. And Beccaria wasn't saying we need to have the most severe punishment for every crime. He was saying that the punishment needs to fit the crime. The severity needs to be kind of measured and proportioned to the harm of the crime itself. And that severity, when it's properly kind of addressed to the crime, will do the best job at deterring that punishment. But he was very against too severe of a punishment. He was, for instance, Beccaria thought the death penalty was too severe a punishment. We should not be giving the death penalty, right? Now, thinking about this, both then and now, which of these can we really affect? Okay? And how easy is it for us, say in the 21st century United States, to affect the certainty, the swiftness, and the severity of punishment? The certainty of punishment, well, we can have some effect on that, right? We can increase the number of police officers and increase the budgets for crime labs and, do lots of things to increase the odds of somebody getting caught. The swiftness of punishment, that's little, can we really affect that very much, right? I mean, there's due process, and there's constitutional rights, and there's the protections against false punishment that we have that take time. So it's very, very difficult to affect the swiftness of punishment. Now, what about severity? Well, that we can affect probably the most easily, right? All we have to do is pass a law changing the possible prison sentence for any given crime. Whether it's a state legislature changing the punishment for state crimes or the federal legislature changing the punishment for federal crimes. That one's probably the easiest of the three, right? But each one has kind of different abilities for us to change, to kind of make it weigh more heavily in that kind of rational decision of should we commit that crime, right? Now, all these ideas are based on this utilitarianism philosophical idea that was going around at roughly the same time by this dude named Bentham, who I believe was English, but don't quote me on that. And this was such a radical idea that Beccaria had to publish it anonymously because he knew it would cause this huge backlash, right? People were going to be mad at him for putting forth this idea that crime was a rational choice. And it wasn't demons or the devil or ghosts or some other supernatural force causing people to become evil, but that anybody could really become a criminal if they were in a situation where their choices were, put in such a place where the benefits of committing the crime outweighs the cost, right? As part of his ideas, he said that punishments need to be uniform. In other words, we shouldn't take any account of the person or the situation. Punishments should always be only about the crime committed. So whether you stole $10 worth of food because you were starving versus stealing $10 worth of trinkets because you were bored, those should have the exact same punishment. In other words, the situation of the offender should be completely ignored when it came to punishments. And that part of his idea we've pretty much rejected today, all over the world, in most of the world at least. But the rest of this is pretty much what we've based our system on, right? Beccaria also thought that all parts of the criminal justice process, from passing criminal laws to having trials where we're determining whether someone's guilty or not guilty, and then sentencing those people and them carrying out their sentences, should be as public as possible, should be as advertised and well known as possible, because that's going to help people more accurately gauge the certainty, swiftness, and severity of their possible punishment if they commit the crime they're considering committing, right? And if we want to kind of reduce that crime, if we want to change people's choices about whether they should commit a crime or not, we need to make sure and educate them. We need to have an educated populace who knows, what are the alternatives to committing crimes? What are the possible punishments for committing crime, right? So the more people know both about the choices for committing crime or not committing crime, the more options they have, the more they understand about the world, the more they're going to be able to kind of make an accurate choice, which is usually, if the certainty, swiftness, and severity of punishment are high enough, is going to be not committing crime, right? Now, there are two different kinds of deterrence, all right? There's specific deterrence and there's general deterrence. Specific deterrence is about punishing offenders so they won't commit crime again, right? So if Kevin commits a crime, society punishes him with a fine or jail time or whatever, and now I'm going to think, oh man, I have an opportunity to commit that crime again, but I remember that punishment from last time and how certain and swift and severe it was, and that was really negative. So that's going to weigh more on my decision. So now when I'm confronted with the choice of whether to commit that crime again or not, I'm going to think, no, the negatives outweigh the positives. I am going to choose not to commit that crime, right? General deterrence is about punishing people so that everybody else is deterred from committing that crime. So if Kevin commits a certain crime and then I get punished for it, again, whether it's a fine or jail time or whatever, everybody that sees that, my friends and family and associates and, just people in my community are going to see that and think, wow, Kevin got punished for doing that thing? Man, I am not going to do that thing because I saw him get punished for it. Better not do that. And that's going to change their rational choice of whether they're going to commit that crime or not, right? So not only are we deterring the people we're punishing, which is specific deterrence, we're also deterring the people around them from committing those same crimes. And that's the general deterrence, right? And eventually, while Beccaria, he might have kind of published these ideas anonymously, he was eventually kind of identified as the author of these books. And there was indeed the backlash that he predicted, and the Catholic Church banished him from the church. He was excommunicated for this radical idea that crime was a choice. And the church banned his writings until the 1960s, when they finally said, okay, people, it's allowable to kind of read these books. So the church was hugely kind of upset by this, right? And as I said earlier, it was Bentham's utilitarianism that kind of inspired Beccaria to write this, and then it also worked the other way around, where Beccaria's writings influenced Bentham back, right? So Bentham kind of expanded on this and talked a little bit more about this, and he described the idea of the hedonistic calculus, which is the same basic idea, right? Any choice we make, we're going to be weighing the pros and cons, the possible benefits and the possible negatives. And hedonistic means pleasure seeking, right? So we're going to make the choices that give us the most possible future pleasure and avoid the most possible future pain, right? So Bentham kind of took this idea of rational choice and expanded it from crime to everything, every choice people make, right? Now, this idea of deterrence and Beccaria's, certainty, swiftness, severity of punishment, and all that stuff survives into the modern day, right? It is hugely influential on modern criminal justice in almost every society. And there have been slightly, it's been changed. The modern ideas of rational choice are slightly different from the original Beccaria deterrence and rational choice ideas. One of the things that kind of the newer deterrence theorists believe that is different from Beccaria is that we need to take intent into account, right? What was the situation? What was the criminal intending? Was it just reckless and stupid, or was it actual malice, right? Those kind of things. We need to take that into account when determining punishment. So little things like that have changed. If you take a further criminology course at a higher level of education, you probably will learn more about what the differences are between the kind of older Beccaria style deterrence and rational choice ideas and now the newer ones. But I don't have that kind of time. So just know that it has changed slightly from these original ideas to the modern day, but not that much. But here's the thing. All of this idea of deterrence comes down to one kind of disturbing fact, and that is that it's by far the most popular theory for our actual system of governance and criminal justice, and it's hugely influential on police forces and court systems around the world. But the academic community has said that it's not true. It doesn't work. people don't commit crime based on rational decisions, either conscious or subconscious. This is not an accurate view of the world. This is not an accurate view of why crime happens and how crime happens, right? So they recently did a poll of 24 of the major academic researchers in criminal justice, and 22 of them out of those 24 said that deterrence is nowhere near the theory that we need to be basing our system of criminal justice on. Now, is it even possible to deter people, right? As I just said, the vast majority of research has said no, people aren't deterrable, right? So one of the things that has been kind of used to try to salvage at least some measure of accuracy and reflection of reality in deterrence theory is the split of people into three different groups, right? And how large each of these three groups are kind of determines how applicable deterrence theory really is, right? So according to this idea, there's three different kinds of people. There's the acute conformists. These are the people who are not going to violate the law under any conditions. Hopefully this is most of us, right? No matter what opportunities we get, no matter what choices we're faced with, we're not going to murder anybody. We're not going to sexually assault anybody. We're not going to steal somebody's car, right? The second group are the incorrigible offenders. And these are the people who are going to commit crimes no matter what. They're the people who are, no matter how certain, swift, and severe the punishment, they're still going to be out there committing crimes. But then the third group is the deterrable offender. These are the people who might commit crime, but they can be deterred if there is a certain level of certainty, swiftness, and severity of punishment, right? But the big question is, if we want to continue to try to deter people, what proportion of the population falls into each of these three groups? Are the deterrable offenders 1% of the people out there, or are they 20% of the people out there? Because that's going to change how much we look at the certainty, the swiftness, and the severity of punishment, and how effective that might be. All right, we're going to go ahead and take a break on that note. Thank you so much for watching. I'll be back in just a moment.